What's going on, Washington fans? Welcome to the stream. This is the Washington Commanders War Room, where I will be talking about all of Washington's picks, talking about different scenarios, especially with pick 29, which is the most valuable pick that Washington has. Whether it's drafting somebody, likely candidates to be there at 29, but then also trade back scenarios. Is it even possible for us to get a trade back at 29? And I'm telling y'all, I've gone through so many different scenarios in my head, and I feel like I've gone through every avenue possible of what Washington could do, but it's still the giant unknown of what could happen, especially with the 28 picks that happened before Washington. Nobody knows what's going to happen on the draft, but I will tell you this: tomorrow here on Bleach Report, we have a giant mock draft that we are all doing. So everyone that represents their teams are going to be doing a mock draft starting at 4 o'clock Eastern time. So I will be on the clock at 29 to make the pick for Washington. But I'm super excited to go through that mock draft and see different scenarios. What's going on, JT, up here in the chat? Hot Mike user said Trey Harris. So Trey Harris was a big name that was here in Washington with a local visit. We've been bringing in a lot of big names here at the end. Maxwell Harrison was there today. Caleb Johnson was there as well, one of the top running backs in the class. So just a lot of big time names. Jahdae Barron was there yesterday afternoon. That was an unknown big surprise that I wasn't expecting to see in Washington. But nonetheless, I really want to go through and just bring this up. And like I said, go through different prospects that I have pretty much singled out. And it's not even just players that they've met with on like top 30s and stuff like that. And I do want to say that they met with about 3 people last year that they brought in for top 30s. I know Jay Daniels, obviously with the Top Golf thing. Javante Jean-Baptiste was the other one, and then Brandon Coleman was in on a top 30 as well. So let me go ahead and bring up the big board for PFF and really just talk through it. I'm telling y'all, even at pick 3, 4, it's just a giant unknown of what is going to happen and who is actually going to fall for Washington. So I think that's where we're going to start, is the likely candidates that can fall down to Washington. And I want to say the highest ranked one, in my opinion, would probably be Malachi Starks. I think positional value is the one thing that could possibly hurt Malachi Starks. He's a safety. Where could he go? I personally have him going to the Vikings. I think that's a top spot for him there. They need some safety help. They need some DB help. And I think, in my opinion, I think he's a first-round talent. Only 21 years old. But nonetheless, would Washington take a safety at 29? I would like to believe so. I think Adam Peters is really, truly in a position where he's like, hey, we're going to take the best player that's on the board. And if Malachi Starks is their highest ranked player on the board, I would have to believe that that is what they would do. I don't see him making it to the second round, to be honest with you. I think he would fit everything that you would want here in Washington. I think he's a big-time playmaker, really good ball skills. I'm a big Malachi Starks fan. If we were to take him at 29, I wouldn't look at it as, oh my gosh, that's not a position you take at 29. That's not my stance on it. If this is a guy who's going to play out his entire contract, get another, play good enough to get that second contract, and be a big-time playmaker on a bad defense last year. Secondary is bad. And right now it's safety play. I hate to admit it, but we got Quan Martin and Will Harris as your starting safeties, and your backups likely Jeremy Reeves and Percy Butler. I can't really sleep well at night knowing that's my safe room, just being honest with you. So I think Malachi Starks is on their board. I think he's one of those guys that fits what they really want to do. He just plays with that mentality that we love on our defense, and it would not surprise me at all. I don't see Tyler Warren being there. I will say Jihad Campbell, my guy from Alabama, another super young guy, one of those hybrids. Let me go ahead and get rid of this overlay so I can see y'all's chats coming down there at the bottom. But like I said, guys, just remember, tomorrow we're doing a full first-round mock draft. starting at 4 o'clock Eastern time, and we are 29th on the clock, obviously. But I think the true question is where would Stark play? I wouldn't just list him as a free safety. I think he's versatile enough to where he can play a couple different spots. But if you look at his size, 6'1", 205 is kind of that tween. He's not small enough to where it's like, oh, he has to be a free safety. Or he's not like 6'2", 6'3", like Jeremy Chin and like 220 pounds, where it's like, okay, he has to be a strong safety. Malachi Starks doesn't really fit any of those. I feel like I personally would probably put him at strong safety just because we do have Quan Martin at that free safety spot. But I think he can definitely play multiple positions, whether it's free safety or strong safety. Now, with Jihad Campbell, the thing that's coming out about him, I want to just tell y'all, like, all the smoke I'm seeing, hearing, all the stuff. Jihad Campbell is one of those players that I have on my list that could surprise a lot of people that could possibly fall on draft night. His medicals looked okay. It wasn't, 100% satisfying to other teams where it's like, hey, everything checks out. There's still some question marks about Jihad Campbell. I think he's an elite athlete. I think athletically, player-wise, he is a top 15 player in this draft. Absolutely. The question is, how are teams going to use him? Are they going to just make him a true hybrid where he plays as a linebacker, where he also plays on the edge? Are they going to just say, hey, we want you to be that outside, stand up, 2-point stance, pass rushing linebacker in the NFL? Or are they going to say, hey, Jihad Campbell, we want you to grow into that true edge guy that's going to put his hands in the dirt and really become an edge pass rusher in the NFL? I think he can do both. So I think there's just a lot of questions. Our team's really going to take a linebacker that high? Who knows? But, he is projected to go more so on that edge spot, just like Jalen Walker will. So I think the medicals is the thing to check up with on Campbell. There's about 3 or 4 guys in this first round range where it's like the medicals are a question mark. We'll talk about them. Rady God said, it feels like we need to hit on all our draft picks this draft just because of the Jaden Daniels window. I fully agree with you. And I think that's something that not a lot of people are talking about is those later picks. When we're talking about Washington having pick 128, 205, 245, that was a giant chance that they could trade back and, get more picks. But this shows as well. This is why it's kudos to Adam Peters, because you check all the homework, all the visits, all the virtual meetings, all of the pro day meetings that they've done with these players that are likely projected to be, day 3 guys, whether it's 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, or 7th round, even undrafted free agents. Washington has done a ton of homework, a lot more homework. There's been a lot of hush about these earlier projected guys. The highest projected guys that they've had serious meetings with were like Landon Jackson, probably in the lower 40s range when you talk about projections. Femi Oladejo, he could be a late first round guy or he can be early third. No one knows what's going to happen with Femi Oladejo. But that's pretty much it. Maxwell Harrison, early 40s guy as well, more of that recent guy. But you haven't heard Washington really meeting with Jihad Campbell, meeting with Mike Green, Luther Burden III. Now, Donovan Izaraku was, part of that group of the top 30 visits, so he is another one as well, which is why I'm, circling Donovan Izaraku for a lot of reasons, but mostly because of that. Kevin Winston Jr. is your safety of choice. Definitely a great safety. I am a giant Kevin Winston Jr. fan. I think he's going to be a fantastic player. Someone's going to get him on an injury discount. He was at Washington's local pro day, so they got to see him work out. He's going to be ready for the season, not worried about his injury at all. I'm all for that. So, but I think it is pretty telling that Washington has only met with a certain group of people and a very, very, very limited amount of people. Now, just because they haven't met with them doesn't mean they're not interested. I guarantee you, well, a lot of these visits, I'll say this first, a lot of these visits are like they're checking boxes and there's one box they can't check for one reason. whether it's, character traits, whether it's how do they interact like with a group, how do they lead, which is why they do these top golf things and why they have, multiple players in at the same time. How do they interact? What are they like in the locker room? Things that you're not going to be able to just see with them running a 40-yard dash. They want other questions answered. So that's what a lot of these top 30 visits are for. And there's teams like the Rams that don't even do these visits, these top 30 visits and stuff like that. They don't think it's a real thing. They disagree with it. They don't want to do those, which I think is crazy. But the Rams draft excellent every single year. So heck, maybe it works. But just because they aren't meeting with someone doesn't mean like, oh, they're not looking at this person. Like Travion Henderson, for an example. I can promise you, Travion Henderson is one of those players where you see the film, everything checks out. You talk to people at Ohio State, you talk to Travion Henderson, whether it's at the combine, whether it's at a pro day, Senior Bowl, whatever, wherever you're talking to these prospects. But let's just say you talk to Travion Henderson at the combine or his pro day. Everything's going to check out with Travion Henderson. I have heard nothing but the highest praise of Travion Henderson, the person, the off the field stuff. Sometimes you don't have to. Sometimes you don't have to meet with these players. Because like I said, Travion Henderson, you know what you're going to get. That's a guy with like Pro Bowl potential at running back and future leader on the team. Like he is like another like Terry McLaurin type, just high character trait kind of player. So just because they don't meet with somebody doesn't mean they're not like, oh, they're not going to draft him. They're not going to draft Jahad Campbell if he falls to 29 because they didn't meet with him. That's not at all. And you also have to think there's a lot of these coaches that have the relations to these players. Like, oh, I coached him 2 years ago. Like Ken Norton Jr. coached Femi Oladejo at UCLA 2 years ago when as his linebacker coach. When he wasn't playing on the edge, he was still playing linebacker. So you just have to take that into account. This is such a connection industry, whether it's in the media or whether it's players and coaches, and you see guys leaving and taking their guys with them and stuff like that. So just have to take that to note. I just want to kind of get that out there. Just because we don't meet with somebody doesn't mean they're not on the list. So if Jahad Campbell falls to 29 because of his medicals, Adam Peters is going to have all that stuff checked out. Dan Quinn's going to, give his thoughts on the player and stuff like that. If the medicals check out, I think that's a home run player. Membo is not going to be there. Green, there's a slight chance he could be there just because of the off the field concerns. But that's the kind of reason why I don't think he would be on Washington's list. Now, Will Johnson has had a pretty bad draft process, to be honest with you. With the injury, the workouts, not doing much, not running the 40, just seems like he's slowly but surely falling down the list. I would still be shocked if he falls to 29. If he gets past, I want to say like 16 or 17, I'd be shocked, to be honest with you. But still, you just have no idea. I think about all of the drafts in the years past, and I just keep thinking, like, I did not expect that guy to go there. I did not expect that player to get drafted that high. I thought this guy was a sure first-round talent, and he went in the third, or vice versa. And you start getting in the day two, and you're only really paying attention to your team, and then you see somebody that you thought would get drafted in the fourth go early second, and you're like, holy smokes. When I was doing my mock draft and stuff, I remember getting him in the 80s, 90s, or 100s. And now he's at he got drafted at 42, 43. Wow. It just takes one team. And every team's going to have their different rankings and gradings on these guys. And that's the beautiful thing about the draft. It just takes one team to take a player. Or it could be one player that everyone thinks they're so high on, but teams, for whatever reason, don't want this player. It could be medicals. It could be scheme fit. It could be anything. And the player falls down the board. And like you said, Josh, like Micah Sanders last year, didn't meet with him because Dan Quinn knew after the pro day he wanted him. Once again, leader at Michigan. They knew exactly what they were going to get out of Mikey Sanders still. Nick Saban said this is the hardest guy he's ever had to prep against, which is the highest of praise when my GOAT, Nick Saban, says that's the best player in the draft right there. Everyone knew who Mikey Sanders still was coming out of Michigan. It wasn't like, oh, we got to bring Mikey Sanders still in. There's a lot of question marks about him. That's not at all what it is. And it's not even just like a bad thing, like, oh, we need to get to know him. Sometimes there isn't a connection with the player. Sometimes you don't really know a player. If it's like a small school guy, or just say like Donovan Ezaraku, for example, maybe they don't have a connection to anybody at Bowling Green, so they want to go out there and get to know this player themselves. But you never know. Sometimes it's also showing their hand. Sometimes they might be doing the opposite and trying to bluff out other teams. Now, Luther Burden III is one that's, you know, he's one of the wild cards this draft. I still feel like there's a big chance he could fall to 29. But once again, if the Broncos say, that's my guy, then that's their guy. That's all it's going to take for them to be able to take him off the board. And I think there's a lot of good fits earlier before 29 for Luther Burden. And then once again, people are like, oh, I think, there might be some question marks. He might be a diva off the field, blah, 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 blah. Those kind of things, like, it might be whispers, but it might also just be overblown things. Who knows? Once again, I'm going to trust Adam Peters to do his due diligence, to do his work, to get to know these players. And I promise you that at some point they've met with Luther Burden, whether it's at the combine, pro day, whatever. But eventually you're just gonna have to trust what they do with that kind of prospect. There's no kind of off the field legal issues with Luther Burden, so I feel like he would definitely be on their board for 29 because he is a great talent. They need a slot wide receiver. He's that big slot guy. He would fit the offense perfectly. A lot of people still have him as a top 10, top 15 player of the draft. PFF has him as their 15th best player. And they're not the only ones. There's a lot of people that are still like, what's going on? Why are people overthinking Luther Burden as a prospect? He's arguably the second, third best wide receiver in the draft to a lot of people. To me, it's hard. It's hard to tell. I think Tet's still the best, and I would put Golden up there. But between Igmeka Ibuka and Luther Burden, those bigger slot guys, that's close. So if he's on the board at 29, people are like, oh, he's not. I promise you, he's not on Adam Peters' board. He might be, a diva. He might just not care. That's up to Adam Peters. If he checks all the boxes for them, then sure. I see your comment. Luther Burden gets a little lazy on his routes running last year. I saw that a little bit as well, but I'll say this too. Like, the quarterback play was bad. There was a lot of missed opportunities with Luther Burden in Missouri's offense. Quarterback play took a plummet last year, was not good at all. Now, Donovan Ezaraku, I'm going to be honest with you. When we're doing our mock draft tomorrow, this very likely will be one of my top targets at 29. I think he fits everything that Dan Quinn is looking for on that edge spot. 21 years old, 6'2", 247, might be a little bit smaller, but he does not play like it at all. I'm talking elite bend, the power he plays with. I mean, just probably one of the highest motors I've seen on tape watching these pass rushers. I was just blown away at how good Donovan Ezaraku really is. Now, I mean, their production is there as well last year. You want to talk about a guy that can do everything, 14 sacks, 20 hits, 26 hurries, but then also had a run defensive grade of 83.6, which is really, really good. Top tier. Run stop rate of 10.1%, one of the highest in the entire draft. Pass rush win rate of 18.2%. He checks all the boxes. All the boxes. And I really feel like a lot of the players that Washington has really looked at that position have had that same mold. Guys who can be a stand-up pass rusher, but also be able to put their hand in the ground. But it's like Donovan Ezaraku, Femi Oladejo. I feel like Landon Jackson, he's just a little too big. I don't know. I'm not the biggest Landon Jackson fan. I'm not going to slander him too much, but I'm not the biggest Landon Jackson fan. But Ashton Gelati, David Walker, these are all guys that kind of fit that same box. So it seems like Dan Quinn has a type. It seems like he just really wants to find his next Micah Parsons, but also same thing. I promise you, when they talk to Donovan Ezra, I've heard nothing but amazing things to him. He was at the Senior Bowl, got to talk to him for a little bit as well. I've heard nothing but great things about Donovan Ezra. I feel like that's one of the players. Once again, they're going to get him in there and be like, man, this is a guy I want in my locker room. This is a guy that's producing on the field. This is one of those franchise changing players. If you're going to stay at 29, whether it's because the player's too good to pass up on, or because you're not really too fond of the trade packages you're getting, and we'll talk about that a little bit. You got to nail that pick. And I feel like, there's question marks with Luther Burden. There's some question marks with Mike Green. There's some question marks, maybe Josh Simmons. How healthy is he? If he was to fall that far. James Pierce Jr., is he motivated enough? Playing only 460 snaps the last 2 years. Can he be that guy, an every down guy? There's a lot of questions. Do you take a running back at 29? But I promise you, one of the safest picks at 29, if he's there, is Donovan Ezra. This is a guy. I'm working on my final predictive mock draft right now, my article. And I'm leaning heavy on this guy at 29. Heavy. I haven't decided if it's going to be a trade back or what. Like I said, there's different scenarios, but this is a big time guy. And I know a lot of y'all are fans of him as well. Hot take, I have Maxwell Harrison at 21 into Tampa. I could see that. That'd be a great fit at Tampa. That's another guy, once again, would you take him at 29? There's not a lot. There's a little bit off the field stuff with Maxwell Harrison, but it sounds like it got cleared up. I know a lot of people are comparing him to Forbes, even though it's not the case. He literally weighed in today at 195 from everything I've seen. And he's a much bigger guy than Forbes, much bigger. Kenneth Grant's not going to be there. Josh Simmons, that's another conversation we have to have too. Washington looked at guys like Josh Connolly Jr. Could they possibly be in line for an offensive lineman at 29? And how would you feel about that? I'll never be mad at getting a franchise offensive lineman because we haven't done that too much. We had to trade for Laramie Tunzel, fine. Still got question marks on Brandon Coleman. If you draft a guy like Josh Simmons or Josh Connolly Jr., then Brandon Coleman's going into guard. There's not even going to really be a competition at right tackle. Get him into guard as fast as possible and let him develop. But with that being said, coming off a really bad injury, how healthy would Josh Simmons be? Once again, with all the teams there in front of Washington, I don't have them falling to 29. There's no way. I have them personally right now going to the Dolphins, but I don't see him getting past the Texans. Emeka Egbuka, I think he's too good of a prospect. I don't think he's going to make it to 29. I know there's still a lot of people mocking him to 29, but I think when it comes draft night, he's a perfect wide receiver for Green Bay. That's exactly where I see him going. Banks, obviously not Cam Ward. Matthew Golden, I don't see it either. Talked about James Pierce a little bit. Smaller frame. He is tall. He is lengthy. Can he be that every down kind of guy, or is he just going to be a, rotational guy that produces a lot for you? I don't know if I really want to take a guy that's projected to be a rotational pass rusher, even if he's really good. You can get that in a second. If you trade back, you can get one in a third. Likely, is it going to be of the same caliber? James Pierce Jr. Probably not. James Pierce Jr. is once again another elite athlete. Yeah, I did see Maxwell accepted an invite to the draft, so that's interesting. That's something to watch. Like I said, Washington picks at 29. He's projected to go there at 20 and beyond. So we will see. We'll see. He has officially entered the chat as an option at 29. But with James Pierce Jr., in my video for Bleacher Report talking about, I think he's too good to pass up at 29. I get the question marks, but once again, it's not like an off the field thing for James Pierce. It's how motivated is he? Can he, I don't know if the coaches that at Tennessee had a problem with him. I don't know. But once again, I'm going to trust Adam Peters. I'm going to trust the coaching staff that, got to know him and said everything checks out. This is a guy that can be really, really good for a long time. If you just watch the film, you see the twitch, you see the motor, you see the elite athleticism. He's just able to get around people. Yes, he does lack that strength against some of the bigger, stronger tackles, but I really appreciate, especially this last year. He got a lot better at stopping the run. I think there's this discourse out there that James Pierce can't stop the run. That's not the case at all. He's still at a 10.1% run stop rate, and still really good run defense grade, same as Donovan Ezeraku. If you're going to complain about Donovan Ezeraku's run stop, then James Pierce is the same as Donovan. So I don't get why a lot of people say, oh, he can't stop the run or whatever. He was much better this year than he was last year at stopping the run, but I'm not taking him off. I know a lot of people have already said take him off the board for 29. Washington's not going to be interested in him for whatever reason. I don't think that's the case. I think fans are getting a little too ahead of themselves. This is the time of the draft. We're just at a week away where we're going to start overthinking things. James Pierce Jr., prospect-wise, for the longest time, even during the season, top 10 guy. Undoubtedly top 10 guy. But what moves him down the list is like, oh, there's question marks about how much he's going to play. There's question marks like, is he coachable? Is he this? Can he be an every down guy? There's question marks, and that is valid. I'm not going to roll that out. But from a prospect standpoint, this is the top 10 guy in the draft. Like he has been. We've been waiting for James Pierce Jr. to come out. Last year, we're like, dude, this is a top 5 guy. And now it's that part of the draft where people start like, oh, maybe I kind of overthought this. Maybe I need to, players are just shifting on the boards so much. Go back to what you know. Go back to before these boards shifted because someone was looking at something or someone said, oh, he might go here. And then we start overthinking it. Don't overthink. Get back to basics. Get back to film. This is the part where I start to go back saying, let me make sure I'm right on this guy. Let me make sure I've got everything that I saw and wrote down correct on these prospects. Jalen Walker, I've heard he's going extremely high. Amarion Hampton, this is one of those ones where I don't see a likely chance he falls there to 29. But if he is, I think it's a home run pick. I think he's an elite running back in this class. But I think about the teams that are going to be before Washington. So even just looking at the big board here or the draft order, I think the range, if Ashton Jeanty goes to the Raiders, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears went Amarion Hampton. I mean, just think about Ben Johnson there now. What he just had with Detroit, that run game, they've been looking heavily at running backs this offseason as well. So it would not surprise me if Hampton goes 10. I think the range is 10. I think Dallas is in there as well. They have 0 run game. I think the next one up is the Broncos. I think he's a perfect fit for what they want to do. They were Sean Payton's offense, Bo Nix and everything. I think he's an amazing fit for what they want to do. Then you have to look at the Steelers. They don't have a run game. They also don't have a quarterback until Aaron Rodgers comes. So I think they're a giant wild card team here as well. They could go running back. They could go Shadur if he falls, which I think Shadur is going to fall. They could go Jackson Dart. They can go Jalen Milroe. I think that's like the 4 picks for me. Hampton. I'm not even rolling out Travion Henderson. If Hampton does go to, let's just say Dallas, there's a world where Travion Henderson goes to the Steelers. So I'm not rolling that out either. But it all depends on what happens on those picks before. But just being honest with you, I think there's a very, very low chance Amarion Hampton's there. And then same with the Chargers. We know Harbaugh loves a good running game. He's a great running back choice for me. I'm kind of leaning defensive tackle, especially if Kenneth Grant's on the board there for the Chargers. But I'm not ruling out Amarion Hampton being there for them. The Vikings need a more reliable running game. And then it's Washington. So you're looking at what? 4, 5 teams that really need a running back. But the question is going to be which team is going to bite on that second running back, and what teams are going to just say, this is a really good draft for running backs. We're going to go with value. We're going to go defense. We're going to go offensive line, whatever first, and then we're going to address running back later. Because right now the over-under on running backs is set at 3. Do you think 3 running backs go in the first round? A lot of people are saying yes. Once again, I'm not ruling out Washington being one of those teams. So we'll wrap up with 29, and then we'll start talking about some other Scenarios, I'll talk about some trade backs. I got a lot of really good articles coming out this next week as well. Guys, we're on the home stretch. Colston Loveland, no. Amar Norman Lott, I like him a lot. No pun intended. But I don't think he's one of those options there at 29. Now, Gray Zabel. I personally have him as a tackle. First off, I think him in Detroit is like a perfect fit, or the Texans as well. I think that's two teams that he would be amazing for. Rams as well, if they decide to move him to guard. But I think he's too big. I would definitely keep him at tackle. So I don't think he will be there on the board. I think that's one of the guys that's going to jump some of these other prospects and go in the first round. I think Donovan Jackson has a chance to do that as well. But talk about for Washington, I mean, I think they would definitely be interested. I think this is another one of those guys, killed it at the Senior Bowl, made a real name for himself. You know, every player meets with every team at the Senior Bowl. So Washington got to meet with Gray Zabel. They got to see what he did all week, and blowing these defensive linemen off the line after rep after rep. And they had to have been impressed with what he did. So I'm not ruling him out at 29 as well if he was to make it there. But I'm not too big on going with a tackle there at 29, but it all depends on who's falling on the board. Now, there's like two other ones that have been listed as like my surprise picks that make a lot of sense. Kevin Winston Jr. is a guy whose medicals came back. He was at like 90 something, then he went up to 60, and now he's projected to go. They have 29. I still think it's a little too high. I think right now a realistic projection is early second. I would say somewhere between 35 to 45 is the sweet spot for Kevin Winston Jr. But once again, if you want him and you're Washington, you're going to have to take him at 29 unless you trade back to like 34 and get to the front of that line. Trey Amos is a guy that, when I met with him at the Senior Bowl, he said he had a really good conversation with Washington. And I think he is one of those corners that is just perfect for Dan Quinn. This is the exact kind of corner that Washington would love, like, feisty, physical kind of guy, really good size, really good movement skills. I'm just super impressed with Trey Amos. I told him, I was like, I'm pissed you ever left Alabama and transferred to Ole Miss, but he said, had really good talks with him, and he thinks he would fit in great on that defense, and I definitely agree. Now, two of my, I feel like it shouldn't be surprise picks, because one's a big need and one, the player is just really, really good. But Nick Scordon, not a lot of people are talking about Nick Scordon as an actual option at 29 is driving me nuts. You go back, I did so much work on Nick Scordon just for him to not go to the Senior Bowl, but it's okay. Bigger guy. He's listed at 6'4", 285. He's down to like 260 now. He thinned up big time. He's back to his size and when he was at Purdue. When he was at Purdue, he was a big time pass rusher, super productive. Everyone's like, this is a premier talent in college football. Goes to the transfer portal, lands at Texas A&M, and then of course him, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner's on the line as well. I would have loved to see Walter Nolan stay there, but with that scheme, yeah, Scort is super young, 20 years old. He's not even going to be 21 when the draft is next week. That's nuts. So he's going to be under 25 when his rookie contract is up, essentially, or right at 25. But the thing that I want people to just context. At Texas A&M, these guys were, I don't want to say forced, but for the scheme, they had to bulk up. They wanted bigger guys that can just, contain the line, not give up those big plays. He wasn't really used as that, pin your ears back, put your hand in the dirt, put your elbow back and go kind of pass rusher. Now he still, displayed really good moves. He has a great spin move that I love. Really good at stopping the run, but I want to see him back to that Purdue, Nick Scordon. And like I said, he's on the way there. He's already trimmed up. Going from 285 to like 260 something is nuts. That's like MMA fighters making weight. Like you see the before and after, and it's crazy. If you saw how he looked at his pro day, everyone was like, wow, Nick Scordon has leaned down. He's getting back to that fast physical shape. And what's going to happen is he's going to go to the Eagles at 32, and it's going to kill me for years to come because he's going to be really freaking good. Like I said, he's a junior. He's an early declarer, 20 years old. But once again, he can be that stand-up guy that Dan Quinn seems to be really interested in, that can just go get the quarterback. He can, throw guys to the side, use his speed and power balance, but then also he can put his hand in the dirt and just stiff arm a guy. But people are always like, how come they didn't produce? How come Shamar didn't produce? How come Nick Gordon didn't produce? It just wasn't it. I don't know why. We'll have to ask Mike Elko why. But Texas A&M's defensive line, they were just used as bigger guys who can just, set the edge and kind of collapse pockets. It wasn't like everyone going and, rushing the quarterback type. Drove me nuts. Yeah, I love how the team was bad because I'm an Alabama fan, so I don't mind it. I hate Texas A&M, but they have a lot of really good players. Like I said, Walter Nolan, if he wouldn't have transferred to Ole Miss, that defensive line would have been insane. So I think so many people are ruling out Nick Gordon as that guy at 29. I'm not. I'm not sure what kind of meetings they've had with him. I'm sure they were at his pro day because there's so many good players from Texas A&M at that pro day. But I know the Eagles are super high on him. And like I said, the worst case scenario for me is, if we trade back or we take somebody else like a safety, whatever, don't address the edge position and we pass on Nick Gordon, he's going to go to Philadelphia. He's going to fill that need of, Brandon Graham and Sweat. And he's going to be really freaking good. It's going to kill me. Just don't sleep on Nick Gordon. Don't just go to the stats and be like, oh, he only had 4 sacks. Was it last year? Yeah, 4 sacks, 4 hits, still 28 hurries. The dude still had a pass rushing win rate of 17% and a run stop rate of 7.3. Oh man, that's like picking my sons. And I don't have any kids. I would probably go Donovan Ezeraku. Just because I love Nick Gordon's size, but just that explosiveness, he's a little bit faster. Gordon's a little bit stronger. But flexibility-wise, Donovan Ezeraku is top tier. Nick Gordon has a little bit of flex. When you talk about ankle flexion, you talk about knee flexion when you're looking at defensive ends when you're trying to scout. That's something that Gordon kind of needs to work on, but he just uses that stiff arm to make it a more round cut to the quarterback, a shorter path. Like I said, Josh Connolly Jr., we've met with him a ton. Met with him at the Senior Bowl, had post meeting after that. I want to say we might have met with him at the Combine. I know we had another meeting after that, and then we had him for a top 30 visit. So we know Josh Connolly Jr. We should know his shoe size by now. We should know everything about Josh Connolly Jr., who, once again, super clean tape this year. This is a guy that was a lock as a first round, and then once again, prospect fatigue kind of stepped up, and then he started sliding down the boards. This is a guy who was projected to be a top 3 tackle in this draft. But then everyone's like, oh, but then Kelvin Banks. Oh, well, Armand Membu came out of nowhere and just kind of blew the board up. Will Campbell, another guy. So it's just, there's a lot of good offensive tackles, in my opinion, in this class. And maybe if they were to trade back to 34, and I'm going to get to this next right after these next few prospects, and get some more picks, I would not be against going Josh Connolly Jr., or even like Gray Zabel if he was the, one of the guys there on the board. I'm not against that. I will never be against building the trenches on either side, whether it's offensive tackle, edge, D tackle. And that's kind of my segue. I don't think Shamar Stewart's going to fall that far. One thing that really bugs me about PFF's board right now, there's 2 players I'm going to talk about. Derek Harmon. I'm not sure why they have Derek Harmon so low on their board at 42. I think this is arguably the 3rd or 4th best defensive tackle in the draft. I think this is a guy that could go San Francisco. I don't think he makes it past the Vikings, to be honest with you, or, if he gets past us, there's no way he's going past the Bills or he's going past, the Chiefs. I think this guy is the second coming of Chris Jones. I think he's fantastic. I wrote a piece about him as well as like our surprise pick. And I mean, you watch the film on Derek Harmon. He will take on double teams. Like he'll just both arms, and then he'll just like brush them to the side and get to quarterback. Like Derek Harmon is I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be honest with you. If 29 has Derek Harmon. I'll go Nick Scorton, Trey Amos, James Pierce Jr., even Luther Bird. Put Luther Bird on that list. Derek Harmon is the best player on that list, and it's not close. Derek Harmon is not the 42nd. This is probably the most passionate thing on my mind recently is PFF's ranking of Derek Harmon. That is so far off. I have no idea why he is that low, but I'm telling y'all, he's not making it. Even the Bengals, he would be a great fit for the Bengals. Holy smokes. Bengals, the Chargers, fantastic. Vikings, once again. Texans need a defensive tackle. I don't see a way that the football gods bless us with Derek Harmon being there at 29. But if he is, Adam Peters did it last year. We were at pick, 36? Everyone's like, oh, it's going to be offensive tackle. We got our quarterback. Let's get him a tackle. Or it's going to be a wide receiver. We're going to get him a weapon. And he went Jerzon Newton. Everyone said, what? A defensive tackle? We have Daron Payne. We have John Allen. We have Phil Mathis. Like, why would we go D tackle at 36? Fans were shocked. I was personally surprised. But Jerzon Newton was the best player on the board. It was not close. Jerzon Newton was a dominant defensive tackle at Illinois. One of my favorite defensive tackle prospects I've ever had to scout. Love Jerzon Newton. I'm a big fan. I think he is poised for a giant season this year. But there's a big possibility Daron Payne's not on this team after this next season. I know he has one more year in his contract after this, but there is a very good out in that contract. Just like with, John Allen, there's an out after this season where you're saving money. You're making that clean cut to where Washington can move on. Then you have Derek Harmon. They also lined up Daron Payne at DN for a lot of snaps last year. They also, played Jerzon Newton out there a little bit as well. And Javon Kinlaw could play out a little bit more. I think Derek Harmon they have it listed here, effective 3 technique defensive lineman. I think he's an all-pro 3 tech. This isn't a guy I want you to move out to like the 4-eye or the 7. Like I don't want him out wide. I want him to be that John Allen-esque 3 tech, guy that's going to wreck games. But you can do a lot of stuff with Daron Payne, who had some notable plays when they did line him up on the edge. Or you can move Jerzon Newton maybe out. I like him as a 3 tech as well, but you can still move him. They've put him at 4-eye as well. They've put him all the way out to 9 last year. So anything is possible with those guys. But if he is the best player on the board, I would not be mad at them taking Derek Harmon at 29. Just being honest with you. I would be one of the fans that's doing backflips. Everyone's like, what? D tackle? But I'm just saying, buckle up. If they let it happen, I'm going to get to a couple more. I saw JF3. I saw you talk about Nick Almaroy. I'll talk about him. I want to get through one more person. Mikael Williams is a guy that I think is a guy that's falling down the boards for 2 reasons. One is medicals. That injury he had, still don't really know too much about that. But then he is still super raw when it comes to being that pass rusher, building that plan to get to the quarterback. Really good, dominant run stopper. But look at the guys Washington. Look at Dietrich Wise. Dietrich Wise, the guy we signed in free agency. Another one of those really big dudes, can stop the run, not really a dominant pass rusher. Mikael Williams. If they go the route of how they signed free agents, I don't know if it's just like a trend or, because they said, hey, we need to stop the run. We can't let what happened last year happen again. But they're just like, hey, maybe that's what we need. We don't need those, Fowler, small type guys that aren't going to, stop the run. We need these big guys, and we're going to teach them to get to the quarterback on the way there. I'm fine with that. I'm more than okay with Mikael Williams being the pick at 29 too. He's one of my top 3 selections at 29. Donovan Ezeraku, Mikael Williams, likely targets. Like I said, if Derek Harmon's there, throw him on the top. But I don't see a way that the NFL lets Derek Harmon fall that far. I'd be shocked. But realistic targets because of that injury and his medicals, but then also because he's not as dominant of a pass rusher, when it comes to his moves and his skill set compared to James Pierce, not even close, or compared to Donovan Ezeraku. But the size, 6'5", 265, and he's a really good run stopper. Can you teach him? I'm not saying he doesn't know how to run, rush the quarterback. That's not the thing at all. 5 sacks didn't just happen. They didn't just fall into his lap. 6 hits, 15 hurries. But when you study the tape, you notice it's like the counters, the hand usage. He's really big. He's really strong. Can you carve out that pass rushing profile for Mikael Williams? And I say yes. I am all on board at not trading back and taking a really good talent. I think he has a high floor just because of how good he is at stopping the run. I think he has a higher floor than, say, James Pierce, Jr., where it's like, okay, he's smaller. He might get bullied against some of these big D tackles, and he might not be a good run stopper in the NFL. And then, we really don't know how he's going to translate as a pass rusher. That's an unknown. I personally would go with the safer pick with a high upside of Mikael Williams. Hey, he's 20 years old, 6'5", 265. He can stop the run with ease. And he's strong, so we don't have to worry about him struggling against these bigger, stronger offensive tackles in the NFL. And by the way, he does know how to rush the quarterback, but there's more to unlock. So think of it from the Femi Oladejo standpoint, kind of like Femi's really good, high motor, excellent dude. Love Femi, one of my favorite players in this draft. There's more there. And I think Femi's a choice at 29, to be honest with you, because they would be super high on him as a person, and then also as a player, just what they can get out of him. But do not sleep on Mikael Williams at 29. He's one of my main targets. Like I said, I'm not a Landon Jackson fan. I know we had a mention of Nick Amanwari, who's been dropping down the boards. And I'm going to be honest with you. Kind of what I just was saying about floors and stuff like that. And once again, Trayvon Henderson's a likely guy at 29 too that's picking up a lot of steam. Dang, Nick Amanwari dropped down pretty far. There's no, there he is, 67. I went right past him. Let me get to the chat real quick too. Like you got Shad said, I said the same thing about Payne being gone when we signed and gave Kinlaw a decent amount of money. Yeah, so there's no guarantee that he's going to be on the team after next season. Hell, if you get Derek Harmon, he might even be one of these trade candidates around that deadline at the end or the second half of the season. So who knows? But once again, if that happens, you're going to have another hole in the line. You already have your franchise guy in place with Derek Harmon and Jerzon Newton as those two guys. Let's see real quick. Another one. Trade out of 29 unless there's a dog there. Green or Boston College, Dean Donovan Ezeraku. So, yeah, I think I like Mike Green. I don't know if the off-the-field stuff checks out for what Adam Peters is looking for, but you're, hitting the nail on the head with Donovan Ezeraku. If Ezeraku is there, I am a fan of quality over quantity. And what I mean by that is go back to the trade, where we traded back and passed up on, it was Chris Olave. I think Kyle Hamilton was there as well. We passed up on really good players for Sam Howell, Cole Turner, Brian Robinson, and we got John Dotson. I would take quality over quantity any day. Any day. And of course, this is a much better drafting front office, but still, same thing applies. Just because you don't trade back at 29 doesn't mean you can't trade back at 61. And I think there's a big chance they trade back at 61 more than 29 because that pool of players that you're seeing here at 61, between 61 and I'll even say like 70 to 75, the grades that you have on those players are so close together, it doesn't make a big difference. You're getting the value of trusting, hey, we can get a couple more picks. I know we did our homework on these day 3 guys or even late day 2 guys where I know we will hit on these players. So let's trade back. Let's get more and let's build through the draft. Let's get that young core. But that pick 29, if the right player's there, you don't have to trade back. I would much rather get 29, say you get a really, really good pass rusher in Donovan Ezeraku, opposed to trading back to 35 and getting a player that you're just like, I expected more out of this guy. I'm not going to name anybody and, talk bad about them, but I'm just saying, like, just whether it's a corner or an edge or an offensive tackle, you get them and you're like, we should just stay on the board. We should have just got Donovan Ezeraku. He's a beast. He's defensive rookie of the year front runner now. And our guy's getting cooked at corner. That's the guy that we traded back for. Yeah, we got some of these other really solid guys too, but we still are lacking this. That's not at all the kind of position that Washington wants to be in. So, yes, I'm not saying that they're not going to trade back from 29, but if the right person's there and you're like, that's a guy that's going to change our team, that's a guy that's an instant impact, he's going to be part of this young core that we have, then you have to pull the trigger. Don't think of it of a standpoint. I've had so many fans tell me, like, Josh, if we don't trade back at 29, Adam Peters is doing a disservice, blah, 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 blah. We need more picks. That's irresponsible. Like, that's not at all. That's not at all. Come out of this draft with 3 really good impact players, and I'll say 3, 4, guys who make, obviously make the team, but have, good playing time and stuff like that. I'm happy. I don't want a bunch of just random dudes. Some aren't active. Some are like rotating in, I want a guy that's getting 15 sacks in a season, getting these strip sacks, making big plays, or getting, 6, 7 interceptions in a season, or just a lockdown corner that's not getting thrown to. I will gladly take that at 29. But Nick Amonwari, I want to get to him real quick because someone in the chat mentioned him. For me, I've come to the conclusion that he's too much of a boom or bust prospect for me. I love the combine. I love the athleticism. But when it comes to the tape, I do like him a lot. And like, if we were to take him, I don't know, 29 is way too high for me. I would take him I would take him at 61. Anything before that, I'm like, man, I hope he balls out. But he has a chance to be really, really good. That's the thing. But for me, it's like, is he going to be a ball hawking kind of guy, or is he going to be, a guy that really doesn't fit in somewhere in an exact thing? Like, is he not going to be elite at one thing? Then defensive coordinators are kind of just stuck trying to figure out where to put him. Like, is this coverage ability good enough to be a strong safety? Like, I know he can hit. I know he can be, physical, but he's not good enough to just make him a box safety. That's not what you're drafting him for. Like, you want him to have that range and show that speed off. But then once again, like, is he too big to be that kind of guy? So for me, he's just too much of a boomer bust at 29. I think that's way too high. I'd rather have Azariah Thomas. I love Azariah Thomas, but I want to go through this real quick too before I wrap up at the hour mark. Just talking about possible trade back candidates. I just read an article that people are saying the over-under on trades in round 1 are about 3. Yeah, I agree with that. Even Warrior is the Anthony Richardson of the class. He's either going to be really good because of his athleticism, or it's going to let him down and somebody's going to reach too far on him. But a lot of people are saying there's a lot of teams that could trade back. They're saying Falcons are one to watch. Another one was because they said like 15, 16, 17. This is where teams are trying to get to. So teams are trying to get to the Falcons. Teams are trying to get to the Cardinals and get ahead of the Bengals. Another team that I think could likely trade back would be the Vikings, because they only have 4 picks. If you thought it was rough here, they only have 4 picks. So I think that's a team that could trade back to the early second. If someone wants to go up and get a quarterback. And I think same with Rams. I think that's a team that could trade back, get some more picks. They're used to not having a first anyways. Besides, when they got like Jared Verse. But outside of that, I think obviously Washington is one to look for just because of the lack of draft picks. But once again, if the right player's there, I think they will pick. Now, I have an article coming up soon talking about, different targets to trade back with. Obviously, the Browns, I think they go Travis Hunter at 2. They're the number 1. They could, not give up a lot, but still enough for Washington to trade back, going back 4 spots. They come up here, get a quarterback. All depends on what happens with the Saints at 9 if they get a quarterback, because that's the big question mark. Maybe they take Shadur, surprise some people. Some people think he goes there. I think he falls. I honestly do. Then once again, Steelers. Are they going to really just put all of their eggs in a basket with Aaron Rodgers? Do we even hear a back from Aaron Rodgers before the draft? Hopefully. Do they go Jalen Milroe? Do they go Jackson Dart? Do they go Shador? There's not really any other teams in this back half that would go quarterback, but these are teams that could get jumped. So like the Browns could go to the Rams to take Jackson Dart or whoever they want at quarterback, Jalen Milroe. So I think the Browns are the number 1 trade back target. They're not going to go quarterback at 2. They still need a quarterback. I think they're the prime candidates to do that there. And the same with the Giants. They need a quarterback. Do they go Shadur at 3? Does ownership get involved and say, hey, go get Shadur? We need a quarterback. Nothing else matters if you don't have a quarterback. Possibly. But if not, once again, they've worked out every quarterback from Tyler Shuck to Jalen Milroe to Jackson Dart, Shador Sanders, all of them. I have, zero worries about trading with a division rival. None at all. And Adam Peters doesn't either. Look, like trading with the Eagles last year helped them get Cooper DeJean. Didn't bother me at all. Didn't bother him at all. I did not care. Fans were like, what are you doing? I could care less. If it helps our team, do it. Don't worry about other teams. So if the Giants want to come up there to 29, heck yeah, I would trade with them. If it makes our team better and we win that trade, sign me up. I would gladly go here. I could see the Titans only because they do have a good amount of picks. As you can see where my head is, they have a good amount of picks. And I'm just thinking, like, if Luther Burden is there, maybe they want to jump up and get him, or maybe they want to go with another top edge rusher. Like if James Pierce is there or something like that, like, hey, we really want to go get that guy. Obviously, they're going Cam Ward first. But with the amount of talent that could be there at 29, maybe they're like, hey, we want to get one of those guys before he goes to the Bills, the Chiefs, the Eagles, the Browns, or the Giants. Jaguars, I keep thinking about them too because they have a ton of picks. I think they're going to want, new coach, new GM. Maybe they're one of the aggressive teams. But the other team I keep coming back to, but I struggle with is the Saints because they don't have a lot of picks. But I'll say this, if you're trading with the Saints at 40, I think that's a sweet spot for us. One, it makes sense. Like I said, if they pass up on quarterback, a lot of rumors are that they want a top defensive player at 9, not Shador. If they say, hey, we're going to wait, and where's New Orleans? Maybe I'm blind. There they are. Say, like, hey, we're going to go 40. You could get, if you put it in the trade calculator, talking about value-wise, you could get 93 back. So if you go back from 29, you go to 40, you get 93. I don't think they would want to give up another pick this year because then they only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picks. I feel like they need more. They need to reset. So you'd probably get 6 next year. That's probably what your trade package looks like. 93 and 6th round next year. You offer that trade, you get it. Start, boom. So now you're sitting there at 40. Now it starts the conversation of, okay, this is where I'm fine taking Amarion Hampton, Trey Amos, Kevin Winston Jr., Jaden Higgins, Maxwell Harrison. Heck, even if they want to go like Donovan Jackson at guard, that's fine. But Caleb Johnson at 40, big time Caleb guy. So you start having that conversation with the Saints. But once again, they don't have a lot of picks. But if you can get 93 out of them, shoot, I'm doing that. You got 40, 61, 93, 128, 205, 245. I like that. So you still, this chunk here, you're going to get 3 impact players. Let me just do a quick run through. So say 40, we're going to go. Let's see who's on the board. I wonder if I could take Femi at 61. So I'll just go Trayvon Henderson, 40. Bam, lock it in. 61. I'm going to go Femiola Dejo. We did offense. Let's do defense. 93. I would love DJ Giddens. Ashton Gelati is an option there as well. We can go Kyle Williams. Let's do that at 93. He's still on the board here. Then 128. I like what we have as well. I can go corner. Noel Williams, Billy Bowman. Let's do. I'm a really big Noel Williams fan. So let's just go Noel Williams. I think he's a day one starter. Super underrated. 205. I would love Craig Woodson too. For the sake of not picking the same college, I'll say, bam, we're going to go RJ Mickens, a guy that I've studied a lot too. Really fits the safety room. And then round it out. Let's see. I usually go either linebacker, offensive line. Let's go with Garrett Dellinger. I like him a lot. Really good mover. Former teammate of Jaden Daniels. Boom. Just like that. Just showing you. I don't care about the draft grade. But just showing you, if you were to trade back with the Saints from 29 to 40, you're picking up 93 and a 6 next year. So you think about that too. You're also helping out next year where you don't have a lot of picks. Travion Henderson, we've already talked plenty about him. Same with Femiola Dejo. Or if you want to go 61, if you want to go corner, or if you want to go wide receiver, like a Jalen Knowles, another guy I've been doing a lot. 93, I've been going either wide receiver, running backs sometimes, depends what happens here, or corner. 128, if they're going to go Jaden Blue, Jarquez Hunter at running back, one of those round 4 guys, that's a really good spot. But if not, same thing, corner. 205, I usually go RJ Mickens or safety, Jalen Smith, the corner, someone like that from USC. There's just a lot of different scenarios here, but this is just showing you what that could look like. Even with 6 picks, trading back with the Saints, picking up 93. That's big. That's big time value. So adding that pick next year as well helps a ton. Like I said, we're going to do a ton more stuff. Obviously, next Wednesday is my stream. We're going to do the final mock draft as we get ready. But this is just giving y'all an idea of what to expect at 29. Trade back targets, stuff like that, different scenarios that you should be thinking about. Obviously, Adam Peters right now, as of today, has no idea what he's going to do at the draft. Why? Because the draft hasn't happened yet, and those first 28 picks have to happen. That's the beautiful thing about this draft. The time is just ticking off the clock when you're on the clock, but you don't know your situation until you're on the clock at 29, especially. If you're picking 2, it's much easier. You have an idea. Oh, yeah, the Bears are getting Caleb. We're going to get Jaden Daniels. We're just worried about what happens after that. We'll be back on the clock at 36 when we take Johnny Newton. But, we'll be on the clock later. We're just going to have fun and watch this first round. It's the complete opposite this year. We are waiting for teams to pick their guys in the first round and then adjusting to what we're going to do. We're having these conversations. We're meeting. We're double checking with scouts. This is the guy we want on the board. If these are the players at 29, if any of them are there, we're going to stay. We'll start getting those trade offers. There's a lot going on. So it's going to be hectic. And I want to be live for every single pick of the draft this year on my YouTube channel. So stay tuned. But hopefully that y'all got a lot out of the stream. And like I said, tomorrow we will be live at 4 p.m. Eastern time, going pick by pick and drafting for our teams. And I will be on the clock at 29. Seeing what we'll do as of right now, I will likely be making a pick at 29 and not trading back. So tune into that. I can't wait for tomorrow. Like I said, hopefully y'all enjoy the stream. We got a lot more stuff coming up, but we are a week and a day away from the draft. So I'll see y'all next time. Appreciate it.